Hello everyone and welcome back to my vlog. Today I'm going to be answering one of the reader submitted questions, and this one comes from Winde Matthews, and she wanted to know where I get some of my story ideas from. So I thought I would go through each of my series and kind of tell you where that idea came from and how I developed it. So I'll start off with the first book I actually finished and published, and that's Escaping Fate. And with Escaping Fate, the idea for it actually came from sitting in one of my high school history classes. We were talking about the Aztecs and some of the rituals they performed and the human sacrifices that were involved. And that idea really intrigued me because I wanted to learn more about why a group of people would become involved in something as gruesome as human sacrifice. And as I researched that more and learned about it, it gave me the idea of having a young girl in the modern day who becomes tangled up in this ancient curse, and if she can't figure a way out of it, the curse will claim her life. So that was the inspiration behind the Escaping Fate series. And the next one I'll go over is my Twin Souls series. And the idea for this series came from when I started reading the Robert Jordan Wheel of Time series. And Twin Souls actually started out as a full-fledged fantasy novel, but I only got 2 or 3 chapters in before I realized it just wasn't working. And I wanted to bring the story into a more modern setting, but I didn't want to lose the fantasy elements to it. So I kind of pulled from local folklore and ended up using a lot of Native American mythology and mixed that in with some of my own created mythology in order to tell Claire and Uriah's story. Now, the next series would be my Destroyer trilogy. And this one, I'll kind of tell you where the inspiration for that one came from. Not all of it. And that's basically because it came from a series that I started reading on the recommendation of a friend, and I really did not like the series. I'll keep the name of the series and my reasons to myself. But what I did like about it was the concept of having this world that on the surface appeared to be just like ours. But when you really stepped into the world, you realized there were some significant differences that really affected how people lived in that world, almost like an alternate reality. And I loved that idea so much that I spent some time thinking about it and ended up coming up with the character Libby Sparks, who lives in a world very much like ours. She's suffering through high school like most of us have done, but she has the added complication of living in this world that has ritualistic inquests that reveal a person's talents and sets their place in society. And for her, she knows her place is not going to be a good one, and she has to try to find a way to escape the destiny that has basically been set for her. So the next one would be my Invisible books, which are called the Heirling series, but most of my readers refer to them as the Invisible books, which is kind of funny. But this one really has a short story because I have no idea where that idea came from. An invisible boy who has one friend who can see them. I think it must have just been one of those random thoughts that kind of strikes you now and then, because I really can't remember where that came from. But it's been a fun series to write, and I really enjoyed it. In opposition to that, my Wicked series, the Someone Wicked This Way Comes series, I can tell you exactly where that came from. And it came from 2 words out of one of Jim Butcher's Dresden Files books. And in that book, Harry is describing one of the other characters as having a godling type of hunger. And those 2 words, for whatever reason, really stuck with me, and it made me start wondering, for a character who knows what they are and where they come from, it's still really difficult to always control those desires that they have. And it made me wonder how much more difficult that would be for a person who had no idea what they were or where their desires and hunger came from, and if there was a purpose behind it or if they were just a mistake. And that's kind of where the idea for Vanessa and Xander Roth came from. And their story is them trying to deal with their hunger, sometimes successfully, sometimes not so successfully. And that has been a really interesting series to work on. It's really pushed me to kind of expand my area of what I'm used to working in. And the last one I'll go over is my Date Shark series. And this is one of my newer ones. I've only got one book out in the series so far. But this idea came from having submitted one of my query letters to the Query Shark a few years ago. And she helped me whip that query into shape, and it was much better after we were done with it. But it gave me an idea for having a man in the dating world who did the same thing for women, who would take them out on a date and analyze their behavior and basically tell them what they were doing wrong, so hopefully they could fix it. And that's where the idea for that book came from. And Eli Walsh is trying to fix all of these poor women who don't know what they're doing wrong until he meets Layla. And he can't seem to figure out why she's not with someone, other than maybe that she just hasn't met the right guy yet. So, those are the stories behind my stories. And now that I've had a chance to share my inspiration with you, I would love to hear from you guys. Where do you find your inspiration? So feel free to leave a comment down below, and if you have any other questions for me, feel free to ask. I love hearing from everybody, and until then, I will see you on the next vlog post. Bye-bye.